going to be handing over to Edward Ciggaar, who's going to be taking us on a journey through some hands-on coding and real-time experiences about using the Cloud Native Toolkit with his experiences with IBM and teaching us how to move forward. So Edward, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having me. And so welcome, and welcome to this. Basically this second part. Thank you, Jan, for giving this this excellent overview of the Cloud Native Toolkit. We're gonna now together just do hands-on with it, and I want to explain a bit more on how I got to it, why and why I'm giving a workshop about this toolkit. So explaining a bit of the journey on that. So my name is Edward, mentioned by Christian. I work as developer advocate for IBM, and my background is in the Java development. So that's how I started with IBM, and then when we moved to public cloud, jumped into that right away and start focusing on cloud native development, cloud native app development, microservices. So all those techniques related still to Java, but could also be other languages, of course, as we know. And besides that, some of the services that we offer in the cloud as well. So that's basically my focus as advocate, as dev advocate. But for today, we're gonna focus mainly on cloud native app development and what then this toolkit could do for that and could help us. So I deliberately put the title with a question mark because I want you to answer the question if this is yet another toolkit or if it's really something useful for you. And you can decide it for yourself after the workshop. And the main repository that we're going to use is next to the official site Cloud Native Toolkit.dev that Jan mentioned in his presentation. I took an abstract of that to focus solely on the steps that we're going to do today. So the URL that you see here, I'm gonna, oops, one back. The URL that you see here, I'm gonna paste it later on in the chat as well if you don't have it right away. That's where where the instructions are. That's where our starting point will be as well, and where we will do the hands-on. So what I just said, I'm a Java developer. That's my background, and I usually give as developer advocate. I give workshops like this. I speak on conferences. That's what I'm supposed to do for IBM, and that's where I get paid for as well. So last year, I think it was last year, yeah, I was focusing on, together with a colleague, I was focusing on delivering Java content for one of the Java conferences at the end of the year. And that was about reactive Java. And we were basically giving this session together. And then I thought, well, how can we extend it? And because that was also completely in the cloud, it was cloud native. We were building a cloud native application, a very small one. But I already said to my colleague, well, it's not. This doesn't stop here. I mean, you don't just build this application and you deploy that from your either cloud shell or your laptop. Normally, if you're in an enterprise, you're going to do it more seriously. It's a pipeline will be involved most likely. You will automate it. You will want to automate it as well to prevent issues, to make sure that you, within every environment that you want to deploy to, that you can do that consistently. So let me focus on building a pipeline for the workshop as well. And I was there was on OpenShift, and we did that with Tekton. So I focused on Tekton, and then I learned about in that journey on Tekton. I learned about Argo CD. And I was starting to look into Argo CD as well, because what I really liked from Argo CD as a tool was the fact that it the whole GitOps philosophy behind it, and that your repository of configuration artifacts, that's your single source of truth, and that's the location, the repository where Argo CD gets its information from and deploys in a consistent manner the application to the target environment that you define, and then also keeps it in sync if you automatically if you want to, or manually. I mean, that's all up to you how you configure it, but it will monitoring it, keep it in sync, and it will completely keep track of history and give you rollback options as well. So I really like that as a tool. So I started already extend to the workshop that I was giving to include Argo CD as well. And then one of my colleagues started to give sessions, teach the teacher sessions for us advocates on this toolkit. So, and I looked into the toolkit and I saw, okay, we've got Tekton, we've got Argo, and all the rest that you normally need in enterprise development as well. So I thought, well, this is, I started doing the sessions, I got enthusiastic about it, and I thought, well, this is something I wanna share that with other developers as well, because it wasn't something I knew. I started digging into it, and I saw so many tools that you normally in enterprise development in some way or the other want to use. And I'm not sure about, perhaps that's a nice one for the chat. For the people listening to me now, I want to know a little bit about your background. So I already told myself I'm a developer, but are you a developer as well? Are you more ops? And I'm asking because this is very much related, of course, to DevOps. It's one of the principles that if you do cloud native developments, that you want to change culture in your company as well to adopt the DevOps principles, and to closely work together with people from ops to together in a faster way deliver the application. So I'm more a developer, and that also means that I want to have it as easy as possible, to be honest. I'm not really an ops guy, so really digging into the nitty-gritty details of Kubernetes or OpenShift to find out how you define resources and how you configure stuff. I mean, please take care of it for me. But if there is and together in the team, if there is a template that for my application make sure that in a consistent manner, and then I'm going to the next slide. And so giving the overview here. If I have an application and I put this application in my source repository, and I'm coding on it and using an IDE to make changes, and then I commit it to the source repository. If then automatically, and that's what we're doing with the toolkit, and that's all set up for us. I mean, I'll explain when we do the live part, but if then with the continuous integration part, so taking up the source code, these sources from the source repository, and then do code inspection to see and make sure that you're sticking to the coding guidelines that as a company together we agree to stick to because of maintenance, standards, etc. So you do some form of code inspection, static code inspection, contract, for example, contract testing. You're building a microservices-based solution, so different components serving as a service, having to talk to each other. Yes, of course, that's something normally we do with REST or an asynchronous protocol, but you need to have a certain, if you make changes to your microservices, the beauty of it is that you can change different speed, so deliver for one microservice a front end, for example, way faster changes and features because the consumers are demanding it, so that you can focus on that. Some more backend or middleware related services don't change that often, so they have a different pace. That's of course where you can use your microservices architecture to support that, to have that flexibility, and to be able to fulfill on that demand as well, and to quickly deliver. But you need to make sure that the two of them can properly talk to each other. So that's when, if you deploy something and you make a change, that you can do your contract testing to make sure that it still adheres and sticks to the contract. Then, of course, part of building cloud native to make it more consistent, to make sure that it can run on any kind of environment that you would wish it to run. If you use, for example, OpenShift as a platform for that, which is based on top of Kubernetes. All of that is containerized. So containerization in cloud native development is definitely, I would say, from a technology point of view, it's I would say it's a no-brainer. But it's something that if you're doing cloud native development, the end goal, you're building a solution and a function that will be deployed into a container, running. And so an image will be created that needs to be registered in an image registry, and then the container will be deployed to your platform. That's the image registry. And then, of course, that image itself, you're building that image, that needs to be secure. So you need to be able to do some checking on it, some testing on it. So there is the compliance vulnerability checks that you want to do. Then the result of this build, the result of building your application, building the pipeline, are a bunch of artifacts that you can store in an artifact management tool. And that then, these artifacts will be published to a GitHub repo that eventually will be used by Argo CD to deploy to your cluster in the different environments. So that's the whole idea, and that's a lot. If you look at it and you think, wow, yeah, hello, I just want to deploy an application. But yes, if you do it seriously for production, these are quite likely the tools, the kind of things that you would like to consider to include as well. And then setting that up in an environment in a consistent manner, that's a job by itself. And that's also, I think, why the garages that we have within IBM, they started using, they were working on projects and use cases that Jan described in his overview. And they saw in the market, okay, which tools are very often and very popular in the market, very, very often used. We're going to collect these together, and we're going to build best practices out of it, open source that as the Cloud Native Toolkit, and give it to us developers as something to consider to use in our daily lives as well. And that's for me the reason to show that to you, to make you aware of it, so that you can judge for yourself, have a look for yourself. I'm not demanding you to use something like this, but just I want you to be aware of it and have a look at it, and just pick the bits and pieces that you think are nice for you to use. And perhaps you share my enthusiasm as well at the end to say, well, this is something I can easily reuse and use in my own projects as well. Okay, enough talking. So this was my overview on the toolkit. I want to get started with really the hands-on. So here's a link to the workshop for those who were not able to quickly type it when I was talking. And again, this gives a brief. So clearly mentioned here. I'm just doing copycat from the Cloud Native Toolkit dev, but that's a huge site with a lot of good references for every tool in this kit. Look at, okay, why is it here? Intro video. So basically your resource afterwards to get more information from. But it can be confusing if it's your very first time. So I condensed it. I focused it on really the steps that we are going to do. And that's basically, we took up the assignment to build a very small microservice, a very first one, to could be inventory. I mean, use your imagination. Could be something, if I may use the hook as well, looking, and I will talk a little bit more about it later on, but the call for code challenge that we have as well, that we support. There are a couple of initiatives. It's about climate change and a couple of sub-themes there within it. If you're having an idea around that and you want to build it and deploy a solution in the cloud, this microservice could serve that purpose. So be the first start in building a solution for zero hunger, for example. So it could be that. That's what we're going to build. We're going to then use a pipeline to deploy that to an Openshift cluster, where the actual deployment will be taken care of by Argo CD. And this pipeline will include all the steps that I just showed you. So it will have code testing, it will static code testing analysis. It will have the image scanning. It will have the JFrog as Artifactory repository. So all those steps are there, and it will take some time. So again, we will walk them. We'll walk through them when it's running. But that's the idea. That's what you're going to do yourself to just get hands-on experience yourself. So explains a little bit the overview image again, and then please browse with me the same time, same pace, and say click on let's get hands-on. And then for those that didn't register yet, follow these steps to register, and then also create your GitHub account. And then the very first step in, if I may show that live, I will, sometimes now I will start to swap browsers. So you will see some screen switching because I'm sharing my screen. So it might be a bit confusing to you, but it's just leaving instructions here and then going to the clouds on my Chrome browser. If I then go here and there is the, so following the steps, the first thing you need to have a GitHub account. The cloud account was one, but within this GitHub account, it's, you then click on your profile, go to settings. You will get this overview of all those settings, and then there should be, yes, here it is, developer settings. I was looking for developer. You go to developer settings, and then the first thing you need to do is to create a personal access token. And yeah, I created a test one to show you exactly how it works, but follow the instructions there. So create a token, so generate a new token. You need the password for that. Let me very quickly. This is not my official account, so I'm not that worried that it's recorded. It's a test account. Okay, so once you're here, turn on public repo here. Just follow the instructions. So public repo, and then for the cloning, and then this one here for webhook creation on admin in admin repo. Yeah, so what this does, if we're at the point that within this, so with this GitHub account, that you with this personal access token, you will let the Cloud Native Toolkit, you enable the Cloud Native Toolkit if we register a pipeline against the toolkit to create a webhook, to define a webhook, and then this webhook will trigger eventually an event listener to get the pipeline started when we push a change, so to say. So that's the idea. That's why we need this personal access token. So this for cloning purposes, and this for the whole integration with the toolkit later on, so that we can automate the start of a pipeline when we change something in the code and we commit it, we push it. I must say pushing, not just committing. If we push the change, then it will be started. So this is it. Then take a good note of this new token, because once you save it and you didn't copy it, you cannot read it again. So you need to create a new one. I'm not going to use it. I'm going to use the other one. So I will leave this. And then the next step. The next step will be, and this is for you. I'm not going to do this because otherwise I will consume one of the clusters that I prepared. I've got a bunch of clusters ready. You can register one with your IBM ID, so the mail address that you created an account for. Go to this URL. So I can click on it. This page will be opened. This is the lab key that's called OS Lab, and then your IBM ID, and then submit it. What then will happen is that you will be assigned a cluster to your fresh cloud account that you just created. And this cluster is something, and that's the nice thing. That's talking about, and also what Jan mentioned in the advantages of the toolkit in the overview. But one of the things he mentioned was a faster time to market, because you automate the whole process, and you make sure that you can consistently deliver and set up the same thing for the different development teams or the different environments that you're using. And that's exactly how I'm using this in real life as well. I'm giving this workshop now. I need clusters for that. I'm not in control of setting up these clusters that you're now assigning to your account while I'm talking, hopefully. So I need to ask that to an ops colleague, basically, of mine in the US. He is setting up the clusters. And together we automated the installation of the toolkit, so that it's after the setup of the OpenShift cluster, it's automatically installed and set up. That's done in a consistent manner. And now everybody has the same environment. You claim one of the environments that is prepped for you, and we move on, and we start really using, as developers, use the toolkit to quickly build the application that we need to deliver. In this case, the inventory microservice or the microservice for one of the code themes that is happening this year. So can quickly in the chat people indicate or mention, okay, I succeeded in getting a cluster. That will be nice before I move on, because for those who did, just scroll down and move on, because the next thing is that you need to switch account to your to the Add4Work cloud account. So I will have a look at the chat. No, Stephanie, thanks for mentioning a bit more about this program. Okay. I will assume if nobody is answering in the chat that people succeed, and I will slowly move on for the sake of time as well. So the next thing, if you enter the key, so you used this OS Lab key, you typed in your IBM ID, you clicked on submit, you should have gotten this message. Then the next thing is if you log on to your cloud environment, and normally you should be, you come in with you see the dashboard. The dashboard is so the dashboard is this. A fresh dashboard, nothing is happening there. I already have 3 services, but you probably, if it's your first time, you will have a fresh dashboard. Then on the top right, there is this twisty here, this drop down, that allows you to switch accounts. So it's the first time you log on, it's your main account, it's the one that has been set up for you. It's your light account, your free account that you can use to explore IBM Cloud and see what it is, and use the different light services and just get a taste of it and experience the cloud. Then the next thing for this workshop, you should have not Edward Ciggaars, but you should have the Add4Work account. That's the one that my colleague owns and manages with all the clusters. So the Add4Work, which is also an instruction, that's the one you should see here. Switch it. And I'm not doing that because I don't want to claim one of, there's a limited set made available. I don't want to claim one. So I prepared one myself, and I will be using that. So switch to that Add4Work account, and then click on, follow the instructions, but click on the cluster list, and eventually make sure that you end up, by following the instructions, that you end up on the overview of the cluster, of your OpenShift cluster, and click on the OpenShift Web Console. What this will do, for those new or not familiar with OpenShift, as mentioned already, it runs on top of Kubernetes. I would say it's kind of an abstraction layer built by Red Hat, obviously, but kind of an abstraction layer on top of Kubernetes. Makes it for me way easier to to use it and define resources, manage services for me as well via operators, than plain Kubernetes. So I can give you, I mean, there are whole sessions, separate sessions about why this versus that, and I'm not going to go into that now. Know that the toolkit, if you want to, also works and can be easily, just as easily deployed to Kubernetes as well, if that's your favorite platform. We're using the Red Hat OpenShift container platform, which has two main views, an admin view, an administrative view, and a developer view. And you can imagine that the developer view is more focused towards application topologies, everything to do with application development. And the admin view, where we are now, offers you gives you the opportunity to also create more admin-related, ops-related activities like config maps, secrets, networking environments, all that kind of stuff, the workload. So it's more details there, but really on the admin level, as the word already suggests. So this is and you end up with an overview page. So hopefully people have their own cluster, clicked on the web console, and also now see this container platform. And so that's there, that's it, that's the first one. And then the next thing we're gonna do, because we need to get started with the, just let me show you one thing. This is the web console, that's nice, but this OpenShift container platform contains a very nice, how do you say it? It's an icon, but it has a special name as well. I forgot the name in English, I don't know. It's basically an icon that allows you to gather a bunch of links there as well. So the console links, as we call them in OpenShift, if you click on this icon here, you get all the console links. And you see here that the toolkit makes a separate section. And you can define your own categories if you want as well, but the toolkit does this automatically for you. Created this section, Native Toolkit, with all the tools that I set up for this workshop underneath it. So Argo CD we're going to use, pipelines is part of it, Artifactory, and it has a developer dashboard. And if you click on this dashboard, you will get basically the same overview again, but also with more to learn, which is good, and starter kits. So more to that later on the starter kits, but just that you've seen that this already. And now to be able to use that starter kit, we need to have a command line properly configured. And I didn't ask you to prepare a lot of stuff on your laptop command line wise. So we're going to use a Cloud Shell for that. So we have a command line, basically, we offer that as container in IBM Cloud. To use that, we need to, so go to on the top right, to your account, click on the copy login command. That generates a token, and a token can be used to, from the command line, log into OpenShift as well. Can take a while, as you can see. Just copy paste that. Go back to, switch tab, back to your cloud, not OpenShift, but to IBM Cloud. And that's part of the instruction. Then click on this Cloud Shell logo. So this will open up in a separate tab a shell running as container in the cloud. But you have your command line available with all the command line utilities that we regularly use for IBM already installed, but unfortunately not the toolkit one. So we're going to do the toolkit ourselves. But the IBM Cloud command line is there, OpenShift, Kubernetes. So all that is there, but also Java, Node. So it's quite a nice thing to use. I like this one a lot. I use this a lot for workshops because it saves people a lot of time setting everything up themselves. Copy paste the login command from OpenShift, and you are logged on to OpenShift. Now the next step, I want to go back to the instructions to not confuse you. So summarizing, you've done this. Then you switched accounts, hopefully to the AdvoWork one. You clicked on clusters, opened the web console. That's what we did. You have this overview. You went back to IBM Cloud and you clicked on the Cloud Shell. It can take a while for the Cloud Shell to be provisioned, to be ready. So be patient, might even take a minute, but also as fast as you just saw with me. Copy the login command. I did the order was for me was different. And then paste this in the Cloud Shell. You could type OC projects to just list all the available projects in OpenShift. But I don't do that. I'm gonna skip that step. I'm gonna use this one, copy. So curl is also installed already. I'm evoking this command, and what this does, it will, from this GitHub site, it will, so this shell script will be invoked, and within this shell script, all the necessary, which are not there yet, or nice to have, command line utilities are installed for you as well. But most importantly, the Cloud Native Toolkit module. So you can see it doesn't take that long. We need to make sure that the change star profile that we activate that. And now you see here that the cube, this extension that it shows me, okay, which server am I logged on to, which project am I using. If you don't like it, you can do cube off, then it will be the default one again. I tend to turn it off, but I leave it on because it's convenient if you switch projects a lot, that it shows you the current project that you're in. And that's it. So we're now, also from this Cloud Shell, we are hooked up, we're logged on to our OpenShift cluster. All the utilities are installed. So basically, we are ready to go. So if we now take up the assignment to deliver, to build a microservice, a very simple one. To get started, and what this could really be just the way you do start, and then start customizing in next iterations. But to get started, we go to the next part of the session, and that's creating the first application with the toolkit. So creating this microservice, this very first microservice, and we're gonna define a so-called namespace, a project that will be used to include every activity that we do from a development point of view. So that has the state of development. So you could have dev, the typical dev, test, acceptance, or staging and production stages. This one is development, a very first one, a very first stage. So we want to keep that all together in a project called, and then give it a name. So on this Cloud Shell, I'm gonna evoke OC sync, and then what I'm doing typically is, you see it here as well. I'm choosing a name that has that starts with a letter that is very early on in the alphabet, because if I then have to switch project in OpenShift, I can show you. You're here in projects, and you need to, or sorry, not just, let's go to config map. So all the configurations. If I then need to switch project, if it's already here, I can just click it. Otherwise, I need to type it, filter. So I already told you that I was a bit lazy, but this is just an example of it. Why? So I choose a name that is very up in the list. So with AA-dev, that will be somewhere here. Going back to my Cloud Shell. Yeah, so OC sync AA-dev. What this will do, it will check if this project is already there. If not, it will create it. It will set it up. So it will set up a namespace. It will create it. And then it will, from the tools namespace, and I will show them when the pipeline is running, because then we have something like 10 minutes to talk about jokes and to answer questions and talk about all the steps. And perhaps have a small break, we'll see. It will copy all the config maps and secrets from the tools namespace already prepared for you to this, the one that you created, your development namespace. That's done now. And now the second step. So now we have this. We're logged onto OpenShift. We're connected with the container platform, so to say. We've created our development namespace, and I now want to start using this application. So I go back to my developer dashboard. Oops, sorry for that. Okay, this one go away. Yes. I go back to the developer dashboard and I click on the starter kits. So the tabs here on the top right, I click on starter kits. And then I say, okay, well, of course, then you have to discuss with your team what is the right language to use for the job, etc., etc. But I'm being pragmatic and practical here. We're going to use TypeScript today because that's one of the easier ones to use for workshop purposes. Could also be a very good candidate for the microservice if you would have want to build it for real. But for this workshop, perfect candidate. It's a simple one and a relatively quick one to do. So we're going to do this one. Of course, you can focus also if you say, I want to do a Java one, you can go that one. But we're going to use this one for the workshop. Give it a name and just come up and make sure that at this point in time, and otherwise you will get a 404 or another error page, and I don't know it from the top of my head, but you should be, could be 401 as well, that you're not authorized, but you should be logged on to GitHub to be able to generate this new repository from the starter kit, from this template. And so make sure, it's also mentioned as a note in the instructions, but make sure that you're logged on to your GitHub account. You should be, because you already did the personal access token as well, but if not, then do it again. Now give it a name. It's test TypeScript 1, I call it. It's my very creative name for this TypeScript repository. And then I click Create Repository from Templates. And what this will do is it will, from this template, it will generate a new repository in my own account. And for me, ready to use, to make changes, start using my editor. I can check it out and start making changes, then commit them, push them back. Just, normal work, nothing particular, nothing special here, so to say. What is special are a couple of files that are added as part of this Cloud Native Toolkit thing. So pipeline YAML, for example, which defines a template pipeline to be used. Sonar project properties with a template, a starter for using the Sonar testing tool with okay, what exactly? So we click on it. This is the template, the TypeScript template. That's what we're going to use. What to exclude, etc. So there's a small starter on how to use the tooling as part of the toolkit. So that's why it's not a typical TypeScript project. So there is some more to it, some configuration files, already a base chart for deployment. We mentioned artifacts, and that we were pushing to an artifactory later on, our build artifacts. This will be done via Helm, so a base Helm chart, some values. Those parts are all part of this repository. Okay, well, just let this settle a bit. It's a lot at first sight, but and so far we cloned the repository. We claimed ourselves a cluster, made sure that we could talk to the cluster from the command line, and now we're at the point that we are actually linking this source repository, this code, to the pipeline, which is generated by the toolkit. So I click on this the copy button to copy my source repository. So I just code and then I click on copy the HTTP version. I go back to my Cloud Shell, and the next command is what I'm going to use is OC pipeline. And by the way, the toolkit provides also in some extensions here on sync pipeline. So there's more happening. That's what you see here. If I type OC sync under the service, a lot of operational stuff is taken care of for me, and that's what as a developer, I like a lot. Setting up listeners, that's later on here. In this case, copying config map so that I don't have to do that myself again, etc., etc. So OC pipeline for this one, paste your own repository, and then what you could do is already, because we're going to use Tekton, you will see if you don't do this that you could also choose Jenkins, for example. So it's not that we just only support Tekton, but there is more. We are doing Tekton for the workshop, so that's why I give this option. And then you need to provide your Git username. That's for me, light user, blah, blah, and the personal access token, which I also prepared here. So I provided my user ID, I provided the personal access token. You should do the same if you're coding along with me. And then again, you see here that it's retrieving the available template pipelines from tools, and that it detected the runtime Node.js. And I say, okay, well, it is also indeed the pipeline that I want to use. So I select IBM Node.js. I am a bit, what I'm going to do, I'm going to play safe here. I will explain later on why. Why? I mean, that's kind of obvious, but last time I checked, the image where this application is based on didn't pass the scan again because there were new vulnerabilities detected and the image need to be fixed and pushed again. And because a pipeline run takes quite some time, I'm going to play safe here and type no, that step is skipped. And I will show you where you can turn it on again. So for yourself later on to repeat this step with scanning turned on. So I choose no, linting, perfect, it's fine. What it will now do is again showing what it is doing for you under the service. It's copying all the so-called pipeline tasks from tools. It's also creating a trigger event listener for me in this development namespace. So that's going to be rolled out now in my development namespace. The listener is called event listener Tekton. And it should, just like for me, for you also, it should end here with very nicely with also a link to the URL where the pipeline is running. So you can select that, and depending on your operating system, do the same as me or whatever it is for Windows to open it, or otherwise copy paste it. And this will bring you to the web console. And then in the web console, in the pipeline section, and within the pipeline section, it's the pipeline run itself that it will, and then the details of the pipeline. So this is exactly where this link brought you to. And what exactly is going on now? Because this is the one that takes 8 till 10 minutes, let's say 10 minutes to complete. And this pipeline itself, this is an Openshift pipeline, which is based on Tekton. And we're using that, we're leveraging that from the toolkit point of view. What it's doing is setup, and every node, every box, basically, what you see here in this pipeline is a task. So this is a task, this is a task, this is a task. And the tasks were just copied over from this tools namespace to my development environment. But all these tasks are together form a natural flow. It could be a starter flow for me if I want to deploy my cloud native application in real life to end up in production. Of course, it's also one of the things for cloud native application development. And I mean, it has always been the case. It's not something new or I mean, it's always, you need to test, and even more in these kind of environments, even earlier on, than then just at the end, and different kind of tests as well. So we're doing a setup, and a setup is just about, okay, here's my source repo. I need to get my sources into this OpenShift environment. So I clone the repository, the one that I need to clone, and that is what is being pushed by the webhook. If I do a push, event listener is triggered. This is being started, so my repository is cloned. Then, if that's done, all the building of the application, the testing, and so all the within the tasks, everything that you see running now, those are again within the task are called steps. And if I may just click on one. So I clicked on the first one, which is successful. If I go to the YAML, you can go to the definition. And that's the definition of this. And you can go down. You see here task setup. There's some parameters. Then eventually it should have somewhere also. No, these are all my tasks. I was perhaps looking at the wrong one. It should have the steps here mentioned as well, but perhaps I should not focus on the run, but directly go to the definition. Sorry for this, but this in the YAML is an overview, complete overview of my pipeline run, showing all the different tasks and the parameters that are serving as input for the task. So testing takes a while. After testing is done, the Docker file, which is part of my repository, is being checked, is being linted, see if that's okay. Then we're building it for the first time, making a container image out of it to be deployed into my development environment. That's done with build and deploy. That's done in my development environment. If that's done, another thing which makes sense if you look at cloud native development and you're deploying something on the cloud, and then it's a microservice, and the microservice needs to talk to another one. So that's where we could implement the contract testing for. But the container platform like OpenShift, one of the advantages of such a platform is that it serves as an orchestrator for my containers, because we know we've done container with Docker, that's 1, and then 2, and then 4, and you go on. And then we couldn't count them anymore, and we need to manage them. So that's where we ended up with these orchestration platforms, these container platforms like Kubernetes and OpenShift. And these applications, they can report themselves as being healthy to serve requests, so that the platform knows, the monitoring tooling around it knows, okay, this one is ready, this one is healthy. And if not, it can act upon it. It could send you an alert, it could restart it, it could whatever. But having this health check, this health endpoint implemented, it's good practice. And that's what happens here, basically checking that the health endpoint is there. If not, it will fail, and I need to go back and I need to implement it, and then I can deploy it again. And again, it's not mandating all this. It's just serving as an example, and then you could decide for yourself as a company, as a group of developers, a team, together with ops and everybody, that has something to say about this. Do we need this? And if so, is this the way how we are going to do this? So the health endpoint, once that is done, we're going to tag it. We give it an official tag that is part of the part in my repo as well, for basically my official deployment, my release deployment. So that's not a commit ID anymore, which I used in development, but really my versioning that I use for this. Gonna also push that one to my image repository again, and then scan it for vulnerabilities. And then at the end, here, use GitOps to basically monitors my GitOps repository, sees a new application coming in, picks it up, and then can deploy it or update it in my container platform. So that's basically what is happening here. So there's a lot of things is going on, and that's what I like about this toolkit. I mean, I see the value of all those steps. I think that can be very relevant if I need to build something for real and not just like what I'm used to do for demo purposes or workshops, or I mean, that's all demo code, so to say. But if you really have to build something for a customer of yours, you don't just want to deploy something onto a cloud. You want to have some proper testing included and some checks that you yourself think is really necessary. And that's where this toolkit can form a base for it. So that's what these templates are for, basically. I see in the meantime, there's a new chat. Scan is for yes, that's indeed. And for image scanning, it is tricky. Depends on your image repository. Thanks for the question. It's a good one. I will open it once because it shows a lot. But Trivi scanning, which is also part and included in the Openshift platform, that's done for image scanning if my repository is the, so to say, internal repository, then that's the default. And otherwise, it's the IBM scanning, the vulnerability scanning service that is running if I would have decided that my image repository is the IBM registry. Because if in the meantime, this is still running, if I go back, I'm going back to my cloud. I return to the cloud dashboard. Then there is this hamburger here on the top left. If I click on that, you see here that I can go to OpenShift. You have overview. You will have all your clusters, but also a registry. And this registry will go to your container registry. And you can set up this toolkit to use this container registry. And then it will use the IBM scanning to scan your images. If you say, well, I'm using a different one, it could also be an external one. It doesn't have to be the internal OpenShift. You can also say, well, I want to use Quay.io or some form of Docker Hub if you perfect. And then the other tool is being used. So the trivial one that I'm using now. And so that's the way the whole toolkit basically is set up. If you look at the Cloud Native toolkit.dev site, for every main category, there are a couple of, out of the box, I would say, a couple of tools available. I decided to just leave some of them out for simplicity reasons, but also for workshop purposes to let yourself add them later on. And that's we could do that if time allows with monitoring, for example. Then we create a new service here in the cloud. So we define, we create an instance of our monitoring service in the cloud, and we add that to our toolkit environment later on to use that as monitoring. So if we would now say create a resource by clicking this here, create a resource, and then look for monitoring, and we create an instance of this one, then you could also later on, there's no issue at all. You could make sure that it will end up on this dashboard, so that you will see here also the cloud monitoring, that's Sysdig, sorry, or logDNA for logging purposes. So that's something possible to add later on. That's a good one to know. So configurable in that sense. Then the other one, oh, I hate this. Yes, thank you. That's okay. Config map, I was there. Yeah, let me see how this, cool. It succeeded. So this one I was done. To go to the image scanning, you see here, Trivi is being done, but now skipping steps because I set it to false. IBM scan is false because we use the internal repository. So step now is being skipped. but that's the tool being used for that purpose. And you can go through all of the steps yourself in your own environment and see what is going on exactly there. The last one I would like to do as well, also skipped, but that has a reason, because we didn't configure GitOps yet. So we now did our first run, our first iteration, and we deployed our application to development. And we're going to watch the results. So I go back to the left-hand side and I switch to the developer perspective. You will get a message similar to this. Skip the tour. And you will, in your development project, you will see this listener that has been defined when we created the pipeline, when we said OC pipeline, so registered the pipeline to the toolkit, so to say. That's that one, so we don't touch that. And here's our application, deployment test TypeScript 1. It's a Node TypeScript application, Node.js, and it's currently running as is defined, one instance, always running. And we could say here, well, I want to scale it, so I click to 2. And you will see then that it will be directly an additional container creating. You could see and have a look at logging if you want to, but also open it by clicking on this URL icon. And this is the starter template, the Swagger page, what you see. Also best practice, common practice to implement this, so that if you work in teams and other teams for other microservices need to use your microservice to connect the front end towards your more middleware. This could be an inventory, for example, the inventory microservice, that you can just go to this interface and use that to make sure that you do the right REST calls to this endpoint. If we do a test and we want to try it out, I'm gonna give a parameter here. I would say go to execute it, and then indeed you say hello GoTo, and note that an exclamation mark is already added by default, so we now have 2. But this is working, so my application is working, so that's good. It's running, it's working. I've tested it, first sanity check, it passed all the other checks, and you could, if you want, I'm going to show that next time, and then also give you a small break, because I can imagine that you think, well, that's a nice guy, but you talk too much. So I want to have some time for myself a little bit. So we're going to do that the next, so almost there. The next break, you will have the option to get something to drink and to make sure quick to catch up, and then we continue with the last part. So, but before we are there, we now have we now have our application deployed to development. What I want to do next is deploy this application, use continuous deployment with the build artifacts, configure that, and make sure that that Argo CD instance starts monitoring my GitOps repo and deploy my application to my test environments. I'm going to create just one, a test, a new project, a new namespace called test, and we're going to configure and use that. Now let's check if that also matches the instructions. So for you, the developer dashboard, that's all we've done. We've done the TypeScript microservice, and then we moved on to the next one. We did the pipeline. So we've done all this. We have had a look at the pipeline, the artifacts. We've done that as well. No, we didn't do the image stream yet, but that will be in the second run. Also in the second run. You could do indeed, if you are on the command line, it's just a nice OC console will give you the console, so that but I will just, if I were you, leave a tab open so that you can easily switch. And now we are at the last stage, and that's where we're now going to use Argo CD. And personally I like Argo CD a lot. And the fact that it monitors a GitOps repo, my source repository with all my configuration artifacts for the deployment artifacts for my application. So I have my real source, my source code separated from those artifacts. So that goes to the pipeline, gets built, gets tested, and the result are a set of a bunch of artifacts that eventually end up in this other repo, this GitOps repo. And that's the one which will be monitored by Argo, and we'll make sure that my application gets properly deployed. But we need to do one thing ourselves here, very first time, and that's just making sure that Argo CD is properly configured. So we need to log on. We're gonna log on to Argo CD. And this is some general introduction on Argo, so you can read it for yourself. Also, if you want to do that properly in the time that I give you in a bit, the small break, we're gonna clone. Sorry, not clone. First, we're gonna generate a new repo. We're gonna generate a new repo from this Argo CD starter kit. So basically, I have my application repository and I need another one. So in a new tab, I'm gonna call this test GitOps 1. It's already there on this account. That's not, I'm doing this in the wrong accounts. That's good that I notice it. Copy link, and I'm doing this in the proper browser. Test GitOps 1. I create my repository. And that's it. Oops, yeah, I'm gonna clone it, and then I'm gonna change directory to it in a Cloud Shell. So let's clone it. So I click on code and I copy my URL. I go to the Cloud Shell, and I'm gonna, not clean, I'm gonna clone it and change directory to it. And then the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a test branch. So I'm gonna check out a test branch, and then the next step is I'm gonna push my changes. So I'm gonna do a push my changes. I need to provide for my Cloud Shell. Cloud Shell doesn't know my Git credentials yet. The time that we entered it before was to store it in Openshift in a secret, but not on the Cloud Shell itself. So that's why we need to enter it here again. It asks for the password. So that's again this one. Yep, so that's done now. And if we now go, I'm gonna close this one, I'm gonna close this one. I've got too much tabs open. Test TypeScript. I'm changing repository to my GitOps, and you see that it has a test branch now that just has been created. So the test branch is there, and that's also the branch we're going to use for these testing purposes. Personally, if I would have to add another one, I think I would create a separate branch for that and use that branch then as the branch for those artifacts. So this branch will serve for the test artifacts, the application artifacts that go. They will all go to this test branch. All my applications that go to this phase. That's the way I'm using this repository. No, sorry. So that's that. And now the final step here is that. Notice that I showed you the last step of the pipeline. Said that we skipped the GitOps because it wasn't configured yet. That's what we're going to do now by again using a command line shortcut for the toolkit. And what this will do, it is also copy over the. It will look at the current repository where you're in. So you need to do this at the stage. Otherwise, you need to provide too much information yourself. But if you do this in the directory, so we are the Cloud Shell. We are now at the GitOps directory. So we are in our GitOps repository directory, so to say, with the one we cloned. If I say enable this one for GitOps, it will see, okay, this is my repository because it reads that from the directory. The checked out branch is test, so it will pick up that one as well. And it will set this in the AA dev namespace. So setting the Git credentials here. If we now go back to the web console and on projects, we go to this dev. You see here Argo CD. So this all contains the information here. You've got Git credentials. So it's using the Git credentials. That's where it's pointing to. And for the config map, it has now a new config map called GitOps repo, and that contains the branch we're switching to. That's test. It contains the organization, the owner, the repo, the whole URL, so all the information needed to properly store the artifacts there. That has been created by entering this command igc GitOps. So that's just for you to know. Just for you to know that. So that's done. That's done. And now I'm gonna pause and make sure, because we're almost there, and that it can run for a bit. But I just want to make sure we're at 6:30 now. Am I going too slow? Am I going too fast? How are you receiving this? Is this good pace? Is it interesting? Do you have any questions? Just looking at the chat. Anybody still here? I still see people on board, so yeah.
We do still have quite a number of people, participants and panelists. So,
but hard to keep pace. Okay, thank you, Thomas, for that remark. Okay, where exactly? Okay, I will pause in a bit, and then I give you 10 minutes, because if the second pipeline runs, I give you 10 minutes. You can catch up. Try. It's always indeed. It's. I can imagine it's always difficult to listen and do the coding at the same time. I try to talk slow, but it's hopefully now you've got time to catch up. When so that's another one. But I will pause in a bit, so you have some time to catch up. And please feel free. In the meantime, if you get stuck, if you get error messages, if you just mention it in the chat, I will have a look there. And but the console has been very slow. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that can happen sometimes. It's unfortunately not in my control. Sometimes it's slow, it's fast. It differs. It differs per day. It's normally quite convenient, and it's okay. But if you want to keep up, yeah.
Would that be due to bandwidth or the console?
Could be. It could be. Yeah. Could be anything. It could. Yeah. But it can be bandwidth indeed. It can be something else. It's there's no message that there's no note saying, well, it's always difficult. So many factors involved. So many different things. So. But it happens sometimes. If I know it really, for example, the Cloud Shell, I know it can really take a minute to instantiate. That can, and sometimes it times out because probably it then takes too long and it ends with a timeout. You just have to refresh and make sure it's there again. But okay, I will continue very, very slowly at the same pace. I'm kind of then hopefully Thomas has some time to catch up as well, and then do the pausing in a bit. So summarizing, we're now at the stage. So we cloned this starter kit. We got the assignment to build a microservice and an inventory microservice, or one for the Call for Code challenge. And we deployed that one into development. We tested it. We cloned the template pipeline. So we have the source repository hooked up to a pipeline. It ran for us. It deployed the application. But now we are at the second stage, and that's basically hooking this up. So connecting this to continuous deployment for Argo CD. And that's done. We did the first step there by defining the right repository in our OpenShift environment by calling this command, executing this command. And the next thing now is, you could do this with sync as well, but it's not really needed because we don't use a lot of the tools in this test namespace, but you're perfectly fine to do it. It doesn't break anything. And you can call the default OC new project and then your test project name, or the sync one. And I'm gonna execute it here. And then of course, give it a proper name. I will use the AA test, not 007, AA test. And then, so that's that. I now have my new project, and you see here that I switched also from AA dev to test. So test is now my active project. So that's done. And now the final bit, because, and this is something you could even, because I'm now doing this, and it's always for me, it's good to say, well, that's for workshop purposes, it's handy. And I really think it is in this case. A lot of this could also be automated if you want to. I mean, we're now doing a lot of stuff, especially in a minute from now, from the GUI. You could automate it as well if you would like to. But I think definitely for the workshop, it's good that part of it, that you do that yourself and that you set it up yourself, that you complete that configuration and then start using it. This is done. Okay. So I've got the test environment is there. Now we can go to the last step here. And I was very happy with this out of the box copy button in GitHub, but then I noticed, or I did it the wrong way, that it included a new line character as well. So basically enter, and it executed the command right away, and that's for the wrong namespace. So I do the old-fashioned select and then copy. So I'm not sure what your experience is, but feel free to put it in the chat if it worked for you. But I do it like this, and I make the change. What I'm doing here is that I add the role of image pooler, to add the role to the group, then system image pooler. I define this service account in the test namespace where we actually are. So our namespace, our new project. And basically what I want to achieve is that the service accounts in this test environment, in this test project, that those service accounts, if they want to and they need to pull an image from the development namespace, and they do need to do that they are allowed to do so. By default, that's not the case. So you need to add that policy. That's basically what is happening here. Explained in developer terminology. So that's what I'm doing here. Allowing service accounts in this namespace to pull images in the development from the development namespace. So it says this group is not found. It will create it. The role of image pooler is added to it, and it's done for the development namespace. If you don't do it, you will know in a bit when you do the Argo CD part. It will not deploy. It's nothing broken. I mean, it just won't deploy, so you get an error message. If you add it at that point in time, it will fix it itself. It will, how do you say it? Because Argo CD keeps on looking, and then it's okay, now I do have the permissions. It starts pulling the image, and it will deploy eventually as well. So, okay, this is done. And now we are at the stage. I go back to my developer dashboard, and I click on Argo CD. You get this message of the self-signed certificate that you get in these situations. I proceed. Take exception, I proceed. I type in admin as the user ID. And if you don't know what the password is, there are two ways. One is explained in the, that's a nice one to have. One is explained in the instructions. That's here. That's a command line version as well. And other one, and the reason is that also this toolkit, it's a collection of open source, and it's an open source community that is managing this, that is maintaining this as well. So Argo CD under the service were changes, so I had to switch from Openshift logging, being able to log in. So the direct login, which at the moment is broken but normally works. So I had to switch from that to user ID password, so admin with the password. This is the way to get the password from the GitOps operator that's stored in this namespace. But the toolkit is set up in such a way that you can also, so you hear directly, you directly get it from the source, but you could also say, well, list me in a Cloud Shell, so switch tab to the Cloud Shell, list me the credentials. And this will list you for the tools, the credentials, and the URLs that you could use. And then use that one and sign in. You should end up here in the in a blank Argo CD environment, no applications yet. And then the next step is then to, and then we are at the point to rerun the pipeline, and we can have a break. But before we do that, we continue with setting up the repository. So Argo doesn't know where to get its sources from, so we need to tell it. Connect to the repo using HTTPS. It's a Git repository, and the URL is, is this one. Yeah, make sure it's the GitOps one, not your application. GitOps. Copy it and paste it as a repository URL, connect, and that's it. So Argo has a repository where it can get its sources from. Then the next thing, I click on settings. So at the settings level, I go to projects, and projects are a way of basically on Argo CD level, also on a view on your application, so to say. So all applications being part of a single project, you could put them into one project. So I create a project just for the sake of the workshop purpose. I call it demo project, and I say create. So that was easy. But then I need to define a little bit exactly. There are a lot of details here. You can go with roles and sync windows and all that kind of stuff. We just keep it simple for today and for the purpose of this workshop. The project itself, every application that belongs to a project can make use of the source repos that is defined for the project and the destinations. We're going to add one source, and that's the source that has been defined just by us a minute ago. Click on save and make sure that it is read-only shown here, like I show you now. Then you know, okay, then this project has knowledge of its source repo. Then the second one, you could do one or more destinations here, depending on how many you would like to use. We're going to do one, but you could say also, and that's where the official instructions, they talk about also creating a staging. So then you go for two instead of one. Destination basically in your cluster. So we use the standard cluster. This one runs on OpenShift. So the internal URL for it is just the default Kubernetes URL. the internal root, and the namespace, we just created it. It's AA test. And for you could be whatever you created as your test environment. We're going to add the destination, and we save it. That's it. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to delete this one. So save it, make sure that it looks like this. If you want, what I just did, you can add more than one and then go for that. Go with it. That's basically it for this. We could have a look at the rest, but it's more in-depth Argo CD configuration and fine-tuning if there's a need for it, and we have the capability option to do so, but we're not going to do that today. So we have a repository. We know the OpenShift container platform as destination. We define a project that has the GitOps repo as source and the OpenShift platform as destination, and that's it. That's it. Okay, so the final bit here now would be to create an application. But for that, we need to have an application directory also in the pipeline, and we don't have that yet. So, sorry, in the GitOps repo, we don't have that yet. So to get that one there, we need to rerun, in this case, rerun, otherwise, with changes, you could do that as well, but rerun the pipeline. And I go back to, where is it? I go back to my web console that I closed. It looks like that I closed that one. That's nice. Okay, sorry, that takes a bit longer then. I go back to my web console. Oh, there's another one, sorry. We had OC console. That's even faster. OC console. Perhaps on your, if you would run this locally, it will even open for you, but not on the Cloud Shell. So here's our console. We have the web console back, and we need to go back to rerunning the pipeline. So we could do that here. We are in the dev space, the dev project. We've got this pipeline. We click on it. We go to pipeline run. So basically, that's an instance of my pipeline definition. It ran successfully, and it took about 11 minutes. And we can here say, just rerun. Back in OpenShift, back in the pipeline runs on the development namespace. And remember, before the break, we triggered exactly the same run, again, twice. But with the difference that we now have this GitOps configured. So if we look at the last step, then it's not skipping the step anymore because it can't find any config map on how GitOps is configured. No, it's there. And using the JFrog Artifactory, it gets the information from the JFrog Artifactory, goes to the GitOps source repository, the GitOps one, and creates in the test branch a subdirectory with the application specific details with the values, the Helm chart, but also the values YAML with all the how many replicas we want by default, etc. So the information that we provided, and I would imagine in real life more the ops related people put input to for the application, but it is stored and now resulted in this application subdirectory. That's there. That's really done now in this step. Instead of if you compare to the last to the previous run, this step is completely skipped. So this is done now. So we can actually create and create this application using Argo CD. So we first gonna finish off that. Otherwise, I'm keep on hopping. So we first finish that. It's done. We go back to Argo. So go back to your Argo CD environment. Then say, I'm gonna create an application. Give it a name. I would say, well, it makes sense to keep that in line with the name of the application. What you could do is include the space name in it as well, for example, but it's a lot of tests then, so I leave it, in this particular case, I just leave it like this. select the project, demo project. That's the second one. Then the sync policy. I want to show you the automatic way. So I choose automatic. And I set it to prune resources if they're not needed anymore. So if the Git repo doesn't define them anymore, if they're not needed because of the Git repo says they're not needed anymore, but they are in the old release, they will be pruned. I turn on self heal if things get broken that it can. So that's that. And now from the project, I select my source. Remember that we had this test branch. So I indeed select the test branch. And then this is why we needed to rerun the pipeline. These were the ones we just got by cloning the GitOps repo. But the TypeScript one, so the test TypeScript one, is just generated. It just has been generated by running the pipeline again. So this is the path in our source. So the GitOps repo, the branch, the test branch, and then the subdirectory within that repo to our application. Then finally, also the destination. And we can leave this as is. If we're going to make changes here, you will note right away, you can do it yourself, that you will get a warning that it's not in line with what is defined in the GitOps resource source. I should say. I'm done. I click create, and now we have this application running in the project. You see that it will start syncing, and it's defining based on what is in my repository in the definition files that the pipeline put there, deployment, the service definition, the application itself. So I just leave that running. This one will eventually it will trigger the deployment and then start pooling the image as well. Can take a bit, and then we will see if we did everything all right, or that we need to do some debugging here. So that it should work, but it's always with live stuff and live coding, something can go wrong. We'll just have a look and we'll see. I must say it takes a bit long. So let this one run for a while. In the meantime, oops, probably somebody not on mute. In the meantime, let's go back to the OpenShift platform, to the environment, and I want to show you a couple of things from the. I'm going to close a bunch of them as well. So this we don't need. This the dashboard we can reach. Profile we did. Okay, so the pipeline is completed successfully, so that was okay. So the pipeline ran. We have this dashboard here under this icon. We have all these links where we can go to all our tools in the toolkit. We have the dashboard with again a convenient environment where we have quick access to the tools, but also starter kits and additional stuff. But a lot of information, a lot of different tools were used in this pipeline. For example, if we look at the pipeline, one of the first steps what was done is static code checking with SonarQube. So that was executed. If we look at that, we see one project analyzed. It's called test TypeScript. It passed. We've got some code coverage here. We've got some warnings. So we could click that, see what is going on here. Code smells, 9 code smells. So you see here, based on this, remember at the start in the TypeScript Git repository that we had this Sonar project properties file where the template was specified in the IBM Node.js. This is why now you get a couple of these code smell messages popping up, indicating, and mostly They're minor and have to do with, indeed here, confusing. So it could be for maintenance purposes that it's better to really take carefully a look at this and fix this. This is what you typically will see in this as a result of this. And if it's really serious, it will fail, and then yeah, you will need to have to take care of it and fix it before continuing. So this is one example. The other one, another one, a nice one. I close this one again. What I also would like to show is as the result. So we've got this image registry, and the image registry currently is pointing to all namespaces. So you see here, when we click on it, you can go to all projects, but pick your development one. And you see here that we've got this image stream TypeScript 1. Okay, nice. And I click on it, and then I see that we got the TypeScript version with the Git short commit ID, and the one that we officially tag later on in the pipeline. So they're both in this image registry. So that's taken care of. That's the other one. Then later on we did the health check, and then later on we went to Artifactory, because as a result of this build, this pipeline, the build artifacts are stored in Artifactory, and that's done. That the way it's set up, we're using the free version as demo for demo purposes. A generic local repo is set up, local to Artifactory in the container platform. And in my development namespace, it creates a subfolder for your project that you're running in. It's for every application in this project, in this development project. It's added to the index file, and a zipped file with the proper image version, the proper application version is created, and this will contain the build artifacts of your application. And this is being taken in the last step as a source to generate in your GitOps repo the subdirectory with all the details where Argo CD will start deploying from. So that's how everything fits together and is hooked up to one another, forming one link, one large pipeline, so to say, to deploy your application. So in the meantime, hopefully now there's sync failed. What is going on? One error. And is this because I did something wrong with there's not even a deployment. So I don't know why the sync failed. This would probably give the same message. Okay, we could have a look. This is weird. Test this afternoon worked. Somebody, demo goals, yeah, always. And probably no surprise to you, they're not really a fan of me. So they're bugging me all the time with these kind of messages. It's weird. I tested it this afternoon. There is something wrong. So we can have a look. I mean, it happens. It also happens when you're really deploying something in real life and something gets broken. So we just need to see if we can fix this together. Let me have a look at my, here. If I switch back to administrator overview, no, I want to go to, it's nothing. So to apply, yeah, but why? It's strange. It's not giving me really an indication why it's failed. Is it for, I'm curious. I created this cluster really this afternoon, quite late in the afternoon, then deployed a toolkit on it. So this worked until now. Is somebody that is using a cluster with a number, I would say less than 12, because I used number 1 to test myself, and can confirm that it is working, or is every not everybody. I know people are really coding along as well. I mean, could people be just sitting and watching me having a fight with the demo code? But if somebody with a lower number cluster could confirm that it is working for them, that will be nice. This is weird. What could be, but I would expect a. I can see if I can. Yes, who is? Yeah, and then especially the number. So cluster number less than 12. So you're mapped to a certain cluster. Has a number in it.
It's worked for him with the 002.
Yeah, that can very well be. What may I switch to that cluster and show the last bit from that cluster? Is that okay with? I won't break anything. I will just click and show on the. If that's okay, is that a yes? Sure. Thank you, Jacob. Then I will start switching. And how is that most convenient to do? Have to improvise a little bit here. I'm gonna do that like this. I will switch to my own cloud account. Then also to the Advo work. Number 2, you said, okay. And this is a huge list, so that's why this one takes a while. This guy is deploying so many clusters for all kinds of workshops over the world. It would be nice just to show me something. And then, come on. And I don't want to refresh because I have to wait again, I guess. So I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I would say one of the key skills if you're hiring developers or other personnel in IT is definitely patience, being able to drink coffee. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so this should be the working one. And then it might be that people with clusters that really are higher in the range, towards 20, above 12, that they might have the same issue. I'm not sure. I'm opening the web console. So same thing as I did on my demo cluster. And yes, projects. Okay, I guess this will be the one. And then CC dev, opening Argo CD. And here you see, so this one, so again, also in this environment, Jacob defined a repository. So the repository is there. He created a project and then defined the application. And you see, normally when you define the application, probably the same way. So additionally to what you saw on my in my demo environment, so where the application was defined, the service resource, the deployment itself, but somehow my pod was not initiated. So I suspect something with still access rights and authorization that is not properly in place for this current version. Luckily for Jacob and the cluster he was using, it was okay. And what you will then see is a situation like this. So where synced with the GitOps repo, the application it is looking healthy, is reporting healthy, is also in sync. And we're gonna see now, I'm gonna make one, well, not a change, I'm gonna force a change and see what happens. If you set it to automatically, if we go back to the environment where this application got deployed. And if I would now say, well, that's nice, I'm gonna increase the number of pods to 3, you see immediately they're already terminating again and back to 1. It's going so fast. So that's what Argo is doing as well. So it's knowing, okay, from this GitOps repo, I'm expecting 1 pod to be running. I now detect that there are 2 running and even 3. That's not how it should be. I'm syncing again. I'm making sure they're at the same state. I'm keeping state as it is defined in this GitOps repo, and I'm terminating these additional pods directly. And that will be the case. If you would change the application, and I will now leave it back to Jakob to try this yourself in your own environment, and I won't touch it. I will switch back to my own one here. So you can try yourself and play around with that. But if you let the application and stick that to manual, and you make that change, then it will scale up, but it will get out of sync, and it will report that as well, that it is out of sync and that it needs to be synced. And that is what I like myself, what I liked a lot about Argo CD, and why I thought, well, I'm going to add this to. I want to definitely include this in my workshop activities and also talk about it. But then when I learned about the toolkit and all the other tools that you basically also got there, and with templates, and for me as developer, easier to set it up, because imagine that you have to do all this stuff yourself, creating the event listener yourself, doing everything yourself. Then probably some would say, oh, that's easy, but for me I didn't found it that easy. For me it was something like, okay, if that can be done for me in a way that is aligned with best practices, what teams that are building customer solutions experience over the last so many years, that for me can serve as a great starting point. And then tune it to my own needs for my own company, and then go on with that. That's how I should look at it, and how I would look at it. Sorry, as developers. So that for me was the reason why I wanted to talk about this and show you this, and that also relates to okay, how and where can I apply this, and is this something that's also what I mentioned in the beginning? Yes, you could apply this, for example, in the so-called Call for Code challenge, where it's a yearly challenge. It changes every year. Stephanie mentioned it already in the chat. You can submit, and we'll see. I prepped where is it? There is this website. I'm not sure if Stephanie is still active, or perhaps just not at her desk. Otherwise, put the link that you want to be shared in the chat, please. It's also in the resources, so it will be in the resources that you will receive afterwards as well. But Call for Code itself, a challenge this year focusing on climate change. A couple steps. You can still join. You can still submit your solution if you want to. It's about a couple of I would say, subcategories, specific topics. If you're looking at climate change, no hunger anymore, zero hunger. How could you contribute to that? How can you, if you have great ideas and thoughts on clean water, and you want to contribute to improving the world, contributing to climate change in a proper way, in a positive way, by coming up with clean water solutions, that's the one to go. Or responsible production and green consumption. For example, you could imagine the carbon emission, and then storing that on a blockchain, and then making sure that is properly traced. So I can order around plastics, for example, making sure that is whatever you produce and the whole product line that you have, that you can properly trace that, for example, with blockchain, and show that you are doing it in a responsible manner as well. That could be an idea. I'm just brainstorming here, and probably you noticed, because it's not something that I as a solution prepared, just thinking out loud. And these could be things that's something you can form a team or join a team and just offer your skills. Say, well, I'm a developer, I can help you with this and this. Not too late, you can still join. And then it could be that you need to build something that goes that lands on the cloud, and probably so a cloud native application. This could be a handy toolkit for you then to use and to use it that way. So that's something, that's an idea to think about, and then link it to either OpenShift or Kubernetes. That's something that I leave up to you, but that's an idea, and that's also what I wanted to say about Call for Code. So I think a good topic. I like the topic myself. I like it a lot. So yeah, if the same holds for you, apply, form a team, and yeah, also do submit and show what you can do to try to tackle one of these challenges here as a sub-challenge. If Stephanie has something to add, please either unmute or just put it in the chat, Stephanie. And yeah, that's what I wanted to tell you about Call for Code. And then also, actually, that's how I want to conclude my the workshop basically. So we are summarized, I think, almost towards the end. But what we've done is we've created an application. Basically, we've assigned ourselves a cluster that had the toolkit set up for us. And using the toolkit, we quickly, within these 2.5 hours, let's say two hours, we had an overview of YAM. We kickstarted a project to build a microservice, a very first one, using all the tools within the toolkit that were configured for us. We created a development environment, a test environment. We deployed it in the development environment, and we used continuous deployment to connect it to, we use continuous deployment, Argo CD, to deploy it in our test environment. And hopefully for most of you that worked. Unfortunately, not for myself. Yeah, I want to leave it with this and not try to further debug that exactly. If you do have similar issues, I'm looking at the chat now. That's definitely indeed, no. So no technical questions here, no. Not in the chat, so perhaps just by speaking out loud and unmuting yourself, if you have some additional questions, or feel free to ask them now. And the final thing I would like to say about your cloud account does not expire. If you created a free Light account, that's for free. You didn't attach a credit card or whatsoever. You can use that to explore the Light services within the IBM Cloud. The cluster that has been assigned for you, that is created by my ops colleague, so to say, in the US, that is only temporarily available, and that will be cleaned up 24 hours from now. So tomorrow, 5 o'clock more or less, they will clean that one up again. Doesn't mean that you cannot use or play around with the toolkit via the Cloud Native Toolkit.dev site. You still have all the options available there to further explore it at your own pace, etc. So you can continue to finish the workshop in this environment till somewhere tomorrow. So you've got the whole evening and tomorrow to do that. So don't worry there. And then after that, the Cloud Native Toolkit site itself with Open Labs, for example, which is built in there. So that's an environment you could use, or yourself. You could say, well, I'm going to do parts of this, and then leveraging, for example, a free cluster on that would be an option as well. So thank you for your patience.